can see I decided to unveil my background today and and uh and to uh just to show what's going on here. So I used to have an office, and then if you following along last week, I ended up with a court order sending all my kids up here, and so I spent the weekend abandoning my office and turning it into a bedroom, and have moved down here in the I call it the basement, but it's really just our garage downstairs. And yeah, I've got a lot of work to do. I just this morning managed to get the desk set up down here. It I had I and then I spent a bunch of time trying to figure out what was up with Restream, because it just like my internet wasn't letting it connect for some reason. And I'm not sure if it's like the distance on the wireless is further away now, or but anyway, it eventually just kind of worked. And so I'm looking forward to getting this done so I can focus on. There's a bunch more kids stuff I'm going to have to do. I've got to figure out how to go pick them up and get it organized around that, and then also just start thinking about schools. And there's going to be a lot going on coming up. So today I decided to circle back on some of the kind of marketing strategy stuff. I One of the things I have this week to work on and is to produce a bunch of materials for a partner program for GPS renting. And I started that by using kind of a model for planning. And that's based on the user experience map that I shared last week. And then I did present that last week. Got the feedback I needed. Really, it was actually really effective. I was able in a short period of time to explain the program. I could tell that the executive, the leadership there understood it and was able to get the feedback I needed. And now I'm going to basically convert the call it the artifacts from that plan that are required to execute it. I'm going to do an exercise this week to produce those. So the topic today I wanted to get into is, call this marketing strategy 101. And really the main thing about this that I want to say is that if you is it that you the first thing is to actually understand the importance in having an actual like marketing plan. It's just amazing to me, like how much I've seen where, this sort of like, hey, I'm going to go get, LinkedIn leads or something, and that's going to be how I'm going to grow. And you're like, yeah, there's a little bit more to it in terms of planning and organizational alignment. And there's I've seen it. I see it so much. It's so much waste in marketing on things where even I'm involved in them. I'm sitting here thinking like, this just does not have all the pieces in place to be successful. And like, I keep trying to work on how do I fine tune what my what I'm engaging with people related to marketing. How do I fine tune my messaging communication so that like the things that get built have a much higher probability of success. You can never guarantee success in marketing or any business initiative, but you in marketing in particular, the failure rate's super high, and a lot of that has to do with just like misconceptions, or just like, hey, throwing money at things that just were bound to fail at the start. So I'm going to jump in here a little bit, and just with the idea of saying there isn't a perfect way to plan marketing. I'm going to share what I think is a really good way, but there's some of these concepts. And again, the most important thing in here is just have a plan, right? Like go through the work and the exercise to create a plan for marketing, so that that you can get alignment across the organization. It has to be treated like like a real initiative or effort. And any kind of initiative or effort that doesn't, it's like when you go to war, you have a plan. When you set out to accomplish something, the prescription is to create a plan for what how you can get there. And again, plans are have to be flexible and all of these things, but just just having a plan and at the beginning, it makes a huge difference. So what is strategy versus tactics, right? Strategy is really that kind of overall, like, you know, big picture vision, right? Like, what's this all part of? Like, it's kind of the why. Why are we doing this? And what is our positioning? Like, it's really difficult to to describe strategy in terms of like, hey, what are the, what's the definition of it? And maybe that's part of why it's tough for people to see this. I mean, I've read lots about strategy, and I guess you could say the how of strategy is so open ended. Like, how do you get to strategy? How do you know you have a good strategy? Like, how do you know what you have is a strategy, right? So you can, and there's ways to think about this. Like, are you making trade offs? Are you positioning yourself to say, hey, we're going to go over the mountains instead of by the ocean? And that's a strategic choice, right? And a strategy is sort of all those combinations of factors. And it's easy to sit around and think, oh, I've got a strategy. I made something up that sounds strategic. Then the next question is like, are you validating? Are you checking it? Are you measuring it? Is it actually working? And so there's a lot that goes into this, right? It isn't something that like you can define a strategy in terms of like a sentence. There can be a sentence about your organization that can be kind of conveying a strategic vision, but there's usually a lot more work that goes into the strategy than what maybe you would see on the surface. And so in this case, there's talking about, tactics are things like, okay, I'm going to go, how I'm going to go execute. So like marketing strategy might be something like, hey, we're going to go and we're going to develop, relationship, an audience or a community of like thinkers around a certain technology. Let's go, or like, let's talk, let's, talk data motive is a good one. So they're working on, building an audience of, IT infrastructure leaders in, environments where data resilience and recovery is super important, right? And they're going to do that by connecting with people at a, direct level in terms of like various tiers of the organization and educating them about, the challenges or the kind of goals of getting to, near zero, like resilience or near zero restoration of time and restore time and data loss, right? So these are the kinds of things that need to be sort of hashed out. I have a meeting later this week that to kind of advance some of this, and it's another one of these places where I'm like, okay, how do I get like marketing thinking into this organization so I can get strategy out when my involvement early was just like a tactical thing. I was like, hey, can you go to some meetings to talk to people about this, right? So that's why some of this can be really important. And if you look at this map, right, there's go to market strategy and there's big picture strategy. And big picture strategy is super important. At some point in time, go to market's going to be much more like, hey, what do we want to get in, over a year, a period of like maybe this year, right? It's like, how far can we advance and develop things. And honestly, it takes time. I mean, it really takes 6 to 9 month thinking. In my experience, like where the projects that I've had that had like big success had that kind of like and they got nurtured all the way along or at key points, and or there was maybe enough success or things going on there that creates its own impetus to keep doing it. But even things I've done that were really successful, it was sometimes hard to get the organizations even to like understand their that what I needed to be able to continue to sustain something. Like maybe you go out and you do a first wave of communication where you get a bunch of people going and you get some leads. Maybe that converts to sales, and then you're like, well, what else do I say? How do I turn this into an audience? How do I turn this into a more scaled up business result? And without an organizational alignment, it's just, I mean, for me as a service provider, I was like, yeah, in incremental places, I could see all these, positive outcomes, but how many of them turned into these big organizational wins or long-term plays? A lot of it, again, had to do with how long I was involved. And, there was definitely, I would say, when I was working and continuing, I stayed on as a marketing consultant to the software company I sold for 5 years, and did a lot of different things. And at the end of the day, I would say the biggest value I added was probably just being a strategic sounding board in terms of like, hey, like don't focus on these things, help shape some of the kind of outcomes. And what didn't, look, I sold the business for you know, for lots of money to my partner, and then he paid me off, and he sold it for like a bigger chunk of money, and just hanging out and bought a farm, right? So you're like, hey, that's a good result. And what led to that, I think, honestly, so often was kind of anchoring back into a strategy that did eventually pay off. And so, and it took, and it did take play out over years. Um, so anyway, I think these are things to think about. Definitely, like when it gets more tactical, say in go to marketing, it's like, okay, there's a place where you've got to sit down and get organized around a plan, right? Like, what are the things that we can do to build an audience, and that, and also how can you iterate and test that? How do you know if you're even succeeding? Like, what are the key things? Like, what do you need to look at? So, and what are the measurements? This is actually really random. Ideal ratio is 100% cost. What dollar to one thing? I don't think this is like, where did this come from? I mean, maybe this is like SaaS go to market. You're like, but I mean, maybe that's true. Sure, you're like $1 per dollar of MRR is actually probably, a reasonable number, but it's like spending a dollar to get a dollar of, you know, like a neck, I spent a dollar on ads and I got a $1 necklace sale. Now that's an interesting one because you could look at it as like, total cost of ownership for any kind of sale. But anyway, I have no idea where, Notebook L or Chat GPT or whatever. Actually, sorry, this would be Google Gemini came up with the ideal ratio. I mean, is this 100% return, which is I've heard. I mean, sure, that's great. So you say I spend a dollar and I get $100 back. And so, sorry, 100% return would be I spend a dollar and I get $2 back, not 100x return. So I don't know. I don't know where this number comes from. Yeah, I mean, spending a dollar and getting $2 back is probably a pretty reasonable, like, and again, it really probably depends on, your so many different factors for how you measure this, right? So, anyway, yeah, here it is. Go to market efficiency is total sales divided by net. Yeah, see this is ARR. I mean, that's a tough one. I don't really get this. It pulled this from somewhere, but this is just not. I can't. I'm gonna have to do a whole separate one on like what are do some research on like what are the metrics in marketing, right? So what's gonna anyway, that's a fun one. So yeah, anyway, next up I'm going to talk about the actual map. So I thought about throwing some some little stickies on here. So this would be probably better in Lucid Spark than Lucid Chart. Truth is, this came from a Miro template, but I couldn't find my Miro thing, and I'll probably get signed up when I launch my work doing this. I think I'll just use Lucid Spark since I like to do a little more complex maps and stuff like that. So anyway, Lucid Chart is my who I'm going to call out for today. So yeah, this map is pretty interesting one, like in terms of marketing models. The it brings together a lot of, like, I would say, the thinking and learning that I've had over, and it was part of this thought process I went through that was just kind of like, what is the like quintessential map or visualization for marketing? And it's really hard to, drawing lines and boxes and even flows, like, just so tactical, right? And what are the things that are out there to represent marketing, and also bringing together some of my own ideas about the sort of what are the different funnel and life cycle stages of the marketing experience and campaigns. And so this is what I came up with. It's got 6 boxes across the top. So there's awareness. So these are just basically the different stages of your funnel or your user experience. And, these are easy to change the labels on them, but they kind of represent some specific things, right? So like awareness is, hey, I'm just getting, attention. Like, no, people don't know me and I want to get out there. And there's different ways. Like there's triggers, like how do you find people? Is at the top, row here. And it's like, okay, there's like, hey, do I reach out to people, get data, push messaging out? Do I capture signals? And as a result of that, make they become part of my audience essentially. So there's different ways that this happens, and the key metrics in this one are generally. I should really just create like a. I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna fill in a guide for this. Like, here's the kinds of things that belong in here. So anyway, today I introduced the empty template. Sometime later I'll put some stickies in here, right? So you got awareness, and I'm not going to go through everything now. I'm just high level because I'm just ready to jump off and get some other, get back to all the crazy here. So anyway, top awareness, triggers, audience, engagement, right? That's, you're looking for interaction, right? Are people engage, and is it good, positive, lots of it? You can see this, like if you start a marketing campaign in the beginning, you're just making people aware. Then you want to look at how are they engaging? Are they clicking? Are they responding? And the metrics you're going to be thinking about again. And so if you look down, you can see the metrics get defined down below. Anyway, I'll keep going across the top, and then I'm going to go down the left. So that's engagement. Action, and could be like conversion, decision. The one thing I put action might change this. It's not just any action, like actions that are just like liking, follow, whatever. Those are not what this action is. This is the action that's like that concrete pivotal action. Like I want them to fill out a form, and that move, that's sort of like maybe, MQL to SQL, or actually, to be honest with you, in this case, the action is like a conversion where there's like a sale or, so it does take some thought. Like you could create this experience for like, let's say, other subsets. Like in the partner program, they're not going to become a customer, but they're going to enroll, right? So it's a low key, like there's not a lot of commitment to it. They're not paying a price. But yeah, so this is to get to the sale, or the deal, let's say, and then it's what happens after that. So the onboarding experience is super important. It gets missed all the time, and this is like a huge psychological step. And somebody's, they've enrolled in your thing, they bought, somebody bought a even if it's like a little thing that somebody bought something from your store. What are all the things that happen right away as a result of that like engage and start to enhance the customer experience, right? And like move them into becoming like a fan of yours. And then the delivery is important too. It's like, how do you deliver whatever the value it is? If it's like, going to e-commerce or something rouse, like, okay, when you send your first purchase, do you put like, a little card in there that says thanks for being, being about, right? These kind of marketing things matter, and they need to be planned out in advance. You won't figure them out if you just sort of like, or like, oh, somebody ordered something, I'm going to send it, right? So, and then the reward is like, what are these activities that you go to kind of make people feel like, hey, they're so glad they're a part of your customer community, right? And these are like, if you map and plan these things, they will likely be a part of your program, and they'll likely produce results. If you just don't, you think, oh, I'm just going to get that deal. I'm going to get a deal and then I'll figure it all out. It's like, okay, you missed the opportunity to architect and engineer a great experience for your customers, and to have them like loving what you do and all of this. So architecture matters, design matters, planning matters. Okay, we're going to go down the side here. So the audience, right? And as you get, so the audience is at the top is like the big audience, right? Big pool of people. How do I reach them? How do I find them? the audience is going to get smaller and smaller, right? As you get all the way to the end, the focus of your rewards type programs are people is repeat buyers, right? And the metrics you're going to be looking at is like how often do they repeat buy, or how often do they refer us to other people, right? That's another big one. So, um, that those audiences change, right? So at the top, it's everybody in a sense, right? And then at the bottom, it's all the way on the sorry, the right here, it's going to be the people that have purchased at least twice from us, right, or whatever it is. So the next one is channels, and that's like how do you reach people? Again, on the awareness side, it's going to be big. It could be like, hey, we're in Facebook, we reach everybody in Facebook, but it could be multi-channel, it could be events and all these different places. Like, I kind of like think like watering holes, right? How do you figure out where your community, your audience congregates, and then how do you get your message in front of them there? And that going all the way across. Again, when you get into rewards programs, it could be like a communication at an annual event, and you know like emails every month or something. So those are the different ways you're going to reach them. What types of content? Again, that's going to be fueling each one of these different experiences. So awareness is generally going to be some content about who you are, and also some content that demonstrates your, like your knowledge or presence in a community. It could be like, thought leadership for consulting. It could be, all kinds of different content that the idea of content is that it should be something that your audience is interested in, wants to engage with, right? So that's way. And as you get into engagement, you get into more like richer content, things that are like, you kind of know more about your audience at that point. So, that there's a bunch of different, could be like, follow up messages, different kinds of things to get people to interact. It really depends on how you build this fun, build this out. What are the metrics that are important? So again, each one of these stages is going to have slightly different metrics, and when usually it's a funnel, it's going to kind of the numbers all go down into the right with a funnel, right? So you have things like reach, like I reached 1 million people and 100,000 engaged, and 1,000, you know, uh, whatever, 1,000 of them like bought something or took, converted essentially. And then, it goes on from there. Like, onboarding may not have a lot of fallout necessarily. And there could be different models based on, things are going to adjust a little bit, even the naming for different kinds of industries or use cases, but there's still, the concepts are important. And the backstage are essentially what are the resources that are needed. So that could be people, systems. Like the project I did the other day was related to Go High Level, and so that's going to be the implementation for a lot of the backstage. But there's also like the marketing team that needs to build this, and I came up with this PDR. They're like, "What is your PDR?" I said, "Oh, it's a partner development rep." So like, could be the same person who does SDR work, but I just called it a PDR. I said, somebody needs to manage this campaign. There's like stuff you have to do. There's going to be like 100 people you need to communicate with, or every day going on Facebook and like checking for like, realtors that just listed a house or whatever it is. It's just not, you can't automate all of this, right? You need somebody that's going to be the glue to put it all together. So anyway, hopefully this was helpful. I'm going to keep digging in on this theme as I build more around this. And call out Lucidchart today, my favorite tool for mapping and designing and drawing cool pictures of business things. And here's myself. Wow, I think this should be like on top, but anyway, sorry, messed up my video. It's horrible. Yeah, no, it's fine. So anyway, strategist, that's me. And I do offer services to design killer business solutions, whether that's for growth marketing, software systems, operational processes. I like to draw pretty business pictures that have a huge impact on your results. So have a great Monday, and I will look forward to figuring out how to